Hello there, you scrub lords, and welcome back to another episode of Devblog Chats. This is your host, many miles away, and today we're going to be discussing not one, but two interesting vehicles that have come out in the devblogs over the past couple of days. And I've been spending quite a bit of time, well, whenever I had it, looking up information on these vehicles, and I'm going to be honest, there isn't much. The Spähpanzer especially, as we will get to, there just isn't a lot of info out there. For the Spähpanzer, it appears that a lot of it is either classified or just not publicly available on the internet. And as much as I'd like to, I don't read, or as much as I want to, I don't read German. And on top of that, I can't just fly to the German archives in the Deutsche Panzermuseum. So, yeah, getting in any information on these two vehicles has been tricky, to say the least. The T14 is slightly more info on it, and I can read it, which helps. But even then, there just isn't very much info available here. In any case, let's get started here and let's talk about these vehicles in depth, starting with the RU-251 Spähpanzer. So like I mentioned earlier, there isn't much information available about this vehicle, but I'm going to tell you what I got. So, the Spähpanzer was based off of the chassis of the Kanonenjagdpanzer, which you see up on screen right now, which we already have in-game. It's essentially a turreted Jagdpanzer, and that's the simplest way I can describe it. They have sacrificed some armor, they have changed some of the engine's components, either that or it's the transmission, I forget which one it is. Basically, they removed the capability for the vehicle to go backwards at 70 kilometers per hour like this thing can. However, at the same time, they added a fully rotating turret, and it changed the layout of the vehicle. Now, the idea behind this was to equip the armored reconnaissance battalions of the Bundeswehr with a brand new vehicle so that they could replace their M41 Walker Bulldogs, which were actually fairly recently built, not according to the devblog. I mean, the T41 really only went into production in, the mid-50s, so, I mean, it's a relatively modern vehicle for the time. However, the German army wanted something different, and they wanted something more akin to their personal needs. So they started development of this vehicle. What they got is a low profile, extremely fast, and I'll get to that in a moment, very maneuverable, light tank. And this initially seemed to fit the bill quite well. However, it was about the same time the development of the Leopard 1 had been going on, and they realized that the Leopard 1 could do pretty much the same thing as the RU-251, maybe a little bit slower, but the Leopard 1 was better armored, better armed. I mean, although it wasn't better armored by much, but you get my point. The vehicles would be ridiculously similar in their roles and their function, and they realized, well, why the hell are we developing two different vehicles when they can essentially both do the same thing, and the Leopard 1 is going to be able to essentially do it better. It may not be as fast in a straight-up drag race, but the Leopard 1, if you've got one tank for all of these different armored battalions, then it makes logistics a little bit easier. For example, you don't have to supply multiple different types of ammunition, you could just supply the same type of ammunition. You don't have to supply different types of fuels. It makes things simpler, and at that point, the Bundeswehr was trying to rearm itself with as much German equipment as it possibly could, and where it couldn't, it would substitute with NATO bought equipment. So the Spähpanzer was essentially dropped because it was essentially a Leopard 1, just less powerful. So, unfortunately, that's really all the info we have. As for the vehicle in-game, it's going to be introduced as a premium, and if it's a premium at Tier 4, like they say it's going to be, it's most likely going to be a 6.7. And the reason I say it's going to be a 6.7 is because of the ammunition choices. Now, both of these I am at odds with. I don't like this idea at all, but in the meantime, the ammunition it's going to get is APCR, Heat FS, and HE. And that's it. And the reason, like I said, it's going to be 6.7 is because these are the exact same ammunition types that we have seen on, for example, the M47. the M48. Like, there isn't really going to be that much of a difference between these two vehicles in terms of the ammunition they fire. There's going to be a difference of names, that's basically it. And there's a problem with that, mainly because the RU-251 did not use the ammunition types that are going to be provided for us. It used German-developed ammunition, and the ammo that it fired was a regular heat round and a 90mm Hesh round, or high-explosive plastic. So there's a significant problem here, because the heat round that it fired had like 380 millimeters of penetration, and the heat round we're getting in game only has the 320 millimeters of penetration. Now, at 6.7, that's not going to make too much of a difference, because the Allies basically have nothing well armored enough to withstand 320 millimeters of penetration. At the same time, though, it's important to realize that this vehicle really should not be a 6.7. It should really be a 7.7, in my opinion. This should essentially be a baby Leopard. And the Germans looked at it that way as well. They realized that, well, for all the merits this vehicle may have, the Leopard 1 is an all-around better tank. And on top of that, the Leopard 1 can do the same job as the RU-251, and on top of that, the gun is more powerful, and they can develop new ammunition types for it and keep it up to date. Whereas with the RU-251, yeah, that 90mm is only going to take you so far. Now, again, it's going to be a 6.7, and it's not going to be at 7.0 or the 7.3 that people have been talking about, because that would essentially be giving people a free Tier 5. And Gaijin's premium policy is such that they aren't going to give people free Tier 5 tanks. They just don't do that. Unless it's like an event vehicle, for example, the ME-262 Sturmvogel. And that was a rare exception. Or the E100, actually. That's a really great example. The E100 you had to work your ass off for, as you did for the Sturmvogel. They're not just going to allow you to straight up buy these vehicles. Well, I guess that's not true. You could technically buy the Sturmvogel if you bought enough of the events with some gold. Anyway, what I'm getting at is, it's going to be premium, and it's going to be Tier 4, and I don't approve of it. And I think a lot of people will agree with me on this one. As much as premium vehicles are nice, they should not be better than the standard vehicles of a tech tree. And I think that allowing people to buy an advantage is one of Gaijin's critical failures in balancing this game. I think a perfect example of this is the T29. The T29 should have been a regular tech tree vehicle, hands down. Would that have meant that there's a lot more of them? Yes. But would it have meant that the Americans had a heavy tank at that battle rating that could be competitive with the King Tiger that they didn't have to throw $40 at the game for? Yes. And that's exactly what they needed, and it took the T32 to be brought down to 7.0, which means that it's still not going to be common in 6.7 games. It's still not going to make up a majority of the team, and I'm not saying that everybody should play the T29, not anything else, but what I'm saying is that you shouldn't have to throw that amount of money at a game just to do well at a particular tier. Like, that's just... no. I get it, you're a business at the end of the day, Gaijin, but this is unacceptable. Like I said, I think a lot of people will agree with me on this. The fact that the RU-251 gives the Germans the exact thing that they need right now, which is they need a super fast, super deadly light tank. The super fast, super deadly vehicle that they had beforehand was the Panther II, and they moved that one up to 7.0 to compensate for the fact that it was just bitch slapping everything at its tier. And frankly, the Panther II probably did need to be moved up. Was it fine at 6.7? In my opinion, yes, it was fine. But it's not a disaster for the Panther II. It's still playable. So, the fact that the Germans are now getting a vehicle that basically replaces the Panther II is really concerning. Is it going to be anywhere near as powerful as the Panther II in a heads-up fight? No. But it is going to have a lot more penetration, and that's due to the fact that it's getting 320mm penetration heat FS. And so, Whereas with the Panther II, you actually had to aim at the opponents. With this vehicle, you just pop over a ridge, fire around in their general direction, and you'll generally penetrate, unless they have a lot of spaced armor, like on the Super Pershing. What I'm getting at here is that the vehicle is going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. It's probably going to be one of the best light tanks at its tier, hands down. It's one of the fastest vehicles in the game. It can do 80 kilometers an hour, but whether or not it's actually going to be able to do that in realistic battles is... we're going to have to wait and see on that one. However, 80 kilometers per hour top speed is ridiculously fast. I mean, that's going to mean you're going to be able to get from one end to the other on Mozdok ridiculously quickly, and you can get there before the Americans can, and the Americans are notorious for having some of the fastest tank destroyers and light tanks in the game. You're going to be able to outdo them. I don't think that Gaijin has a German bias. I think that's stupid, and I think it's just as dumb as Russian bias in terms of it actually existing. But Gaijin, you're not doing yourself any favors here. In my personal opinion, this vehicle should be at the very, very minimum, or at the very, very most, 7.3. And the very, very, minimum, it should be a 7.7. In my personal opinion. And it should not be premium. It should come after the Kanonen Jagdpanzer because that makes perfect sense. You play the non-turreted version, and then you play the turreted version. And then you move on to whatever's after that. Or if the RU-251 is the end of it, then that's the end of it. There is no need to introduce such a powerful vehicle as a premium for the Germans. The Germans don't need it. They frankly don't. In regards to filling out their lineup and making sure that each nation has one of everything, sure, that makes sense. But in regards to not giving it to everybody, I think that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, and it's rubbing me the wrong way as well. As you know, I do YouTube, so Gaijin's going to give me this thing regardless. However, do I think that you guys should have to throw an inordinate amount of money at the game for it? No. Do I think it's going to be $40? I don't think so either, but it's not a move that I would recommend, Gaijin. So I'm going to put that to bed because I'm just talking myself into circles here and move on to the next vehicle here so I don't turn this into a 45-minute talk. Anyways, moving on. So, moving on to the second vehicle in this video, the T14. Now, this was a very, very interesting vehicle, and I honestly didn't expect to see this in the game for quite a long time. And a lot of people who have played World of Tanks and have played World of Tanks a long time will remember this vehicle and know a little bit about it. Like I said, there wasn't much information available, or at least publicly available, on most of these vehicles. And what I really wish what would happen is for Gaijin to basically link their sources where they got this information in a lot of these devblog chats. I think that would help us. I think that would help a lot greatly. In any case, moving on here. So the T14 was a part of a heavy tank project that combined the logistics and the minds of both American and British tank development teams. The idea was to develop a heavy tank that utilized as many parts from the assembly line of the M4 Sherman as humanly possible. And at the same time, create a vehicle that was better protected and could house a 6-pounder, a 75mm, 50 rounds of ammunition. They wanted this thing to carry a lot of ammunition. And on top of that, have the potential to fit a 76.2mm gun or a 105mm howitzer. So essentially, they wanted this vehicle to be able to do a little bit of everything. Now, this thing was built in about 1942, and it was tested throughout 1943, and it existed until December 1944, when it was finally decided that this thing was just too big, it was too heavy, it was too unwieldy, and they just decided to scrap most of them. Now, one of them still does exist, and here's a picture of it, and it exists in the Vehicle Conservation Center at Bovington. If you ever get access to the Vehicle Conservation Center there, it's sitting there just collecting rust, waiting to be restored or put out on the floor for some particular reason. Now, in regards to armor protection, it's quite peculiar, because despite this being a heavy tank, this isn't really much better armored than a Sherman. Now, this vehicle is going to be a Tier 2 premium in-game, which should help it greatly. However, the only two really well-protected parts are the fronts of the turret and the transmission housing at the front there, the cast transmission housing. And both of these are about just over 100 millimeters thick. The upper front plate, not the transmission housing itself, but the upper front plate is only about 50 millimeters thick. Now, granted, it's sloped back at 55 degrees, making it quite thick. However, it doesn't mean it's not going to allow this vehicle to take hits from powerful anti-tank guns. Vehicles like a Dicker Max or a Nashorn or maybe even the Flak Bus will easily be able to deal with this vehicle without much difficulty. So, despite its advantages, really the only way I see this vehicle being ridiculously competitive is if it's put at a battle rating that's just low enough to where the Germans can't bring a lot of their heavy flak vehicles to, or like the Flak Bus to bear, but at a high enough battle rating that it's not seeing like Panzer IV's, because frankly, if this thing was facing like tier like 1.0 battle rating, 2.0 battle rating vehicles, it'd just be completely overpowered. So this vehicle it's one of those, I can see why Gaijin are making this a premium, although I still think that this should be like a low tier, like the first heavy tank that you get for the Americans, personally. Because this, frankly, isn't much better than a Sherman. Also, it's significantly slower than a Sherman and significantly less maneuverable. In the video that you saw earlier, it's moving quite quickly, but that's probably because it's on a downhill slope. According to the World War II wiki, which seems to have the most information I could publicly find on the internet. Of course, it's a wiki, so take everything I'm about to say with a pinch of salt. It says that the maximum speed of this vehicle is 19 miles per hour. Based on what I'm seeing in the videos that War Thunder have put out, that doesn't appear to be the case. It appears to be a lot faster than that. So either World War II wiki is completely wrong, which I'm assuming it is, or Gaijin sources are completely wrong. We'll have to wait and see once we get in game, or if somebody can provide me with more information, like the testing results and some of the statistics. I'm sure there's probably a suggestion post. I just haven't gone and found it yet. In any case, so the T14 Tier 2 Premium, do I think it should be premium? No. Do I think that the RU-251 should be premium? No. It seems that Gaijin are just introducing a lot of premiums with this patch. We haven't gotten very much in the way of regular tech tree vehicles announced this patch. There's a couple. There's like the Centurion Mark 1, which I consider doing a devlog chats on. I may still do one. I'm not totally sure yet. It just depends on how much time I have. But other than that and a couple of other things, there really isn't much coming in this patch that you're going to be able to get normally, which is quite sad in my opinion. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed this Devblog Chats video. I tried to keep it as short as I could for 2 vehicles. However, there wasn't a lot of information to go off of here, and I did my very best that I could. If you guys find any more information on these vehicles, please feel free to leave it down in the comments section, and I will stick around for the next couple of days and answer questions for you guys. And thank you guys for watching. Keep your tracks checked, keep your bindings in place, keep it round in the tube, and I will see you guys on the next video.